Introduction. Welcome to our video on uncovering the hidden roots of suffering, inspired by Joseph Nguyen's book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. Today, we'll dive into why our minds can sometimes seem like our worst enemies, leading us into cycles of worry, doubt, and unhappiness. By exploring the first 4 chapters, we'll look at why we think, how our thoughts affect us, and 5 transformative steps to help us end suffering. Part 1. The journey to finding the root cause of suffering. In the beginning, Nguyen invites us to explore the roots of our suffering. We're all familiar with pain, it's a natural part of life. But what we may not realize is that suffering, the emotional and psychological distress we carry, is something we often create ourselves. Nguyen argues that while pain is unavoidable, suffering is optional. This journey begins with the understanding that we have the power to transform our reactions. Imagine you're hit by 2 arrows. The first arrow is the pain from something unpleasant, say, a breakup or a job loss. It hurts, and we can't control it. But the second arrow, that's our reaction to the pain, which often deepens it. We dwell on the what-ifs and whys, magnifying the hurt. This second arrow represents suffering, and it's often created by our minds. Practical step 1. Recognize the second arrow. Next time something painful happens, notice how you're reacting. Are you piling on extra worry or self-blame? Remember, the second arrow is optional. Part 2. The root cause of all suffering. Nguyen goes on to identify thinking itself as the root cause of suffering. This may sound strange since we rely on our minds for problem solving and planning. But when we start to overthink, especially about situations beyond our control, it turns into a cycle of suffering. Here's the core message. We live in a world of thought, not reality. Each of us sees life through a filter created by our thoughts. 2 people can experience the same event and feel entirely different emotions, all based on their internal dialogue. Nguyen shares a powerful story about a Zen monk meditating in a boat. At first, he's at peace. But when another boat bumps into him, he gets furious, until he realizes the boat is empty. There's no one to blame, just like in life. Often, it's our thoughts and interpretations, not reality, that create our anger. Practical step 2. See the empty boat. When you feel strong emotions, try to pause and question your thoughts. Are they based on actual events, or are they reactions to what you think is happening? Part 3. Why do we even think? Why do we have this capacity to think so much? According to Nguyen, it all started with survival. Our ancestors needed sharp minds to detect threats and navigate dangers. Over time, we've become exceptionally skilled at thinking, analyzing, and predicting. But here's the twist: while thinking has helped us survive, it doesn't necessarily help us thrive. In our modern lives, this survival-driven thinking often translates into overanalyzing, worrying, and anticipating negative outcomes. This constant fight or flight mode keeps us stuck in a loop of fear and anxiety, even when we're not in actual danger. Nguyen explains that our mind's purpose is to keep us safe. Yet, for fulfillment and joy, we need to go beyond just the mind. Nguyen encourages us to start tuning into our consciousness and intuition to find peace and well-being. Practical step 3. Separate survival from fulfillment. Notice when your mind is spinning in survival mode. Ask yourself, is this thought keeping me safe, or is it keeping me from being happy? Part 4. Thoughts versus thinking. The distinction between thoughts and thinking is crucial in Nguyen's philosophy. He defines thoughts as spontaneous, neutral, and often creative ideas that naturally flow. Thinking, on the other hand, is when we start analyzing, judging, or dwelling on these thoughts. This is where our suffering begins. As Lao Tzu famously said, stop thinking and end your problems. Imagine this scenario. You have a random thought about a new goal. In that instant, it's exciting and feels achievable. But as you start thinking about it, doubts creep in. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? That initial thought was light and full of possibility. But the thinking that follows can often lead to self-doubt and emotional turmoil. Practical step 4. Practice letting go of excessive thinking. When a thought enters, try to observe it without engaging too deeply. Let it come and go without judgment. Practical application. 5 steps to reduce suffering. Now that we understand the concepts, let's summarize 5 practical steps inspired by Nguyen to help us reduce suffering in our daily lives. Identify the second arrow. Recognize when you're reacting with added judgment or self-blame. Let that second arrow go. See the empty boat. Remind yourself that most situations don't carry inherent meaning. We often project our own interpretations. Separate survival from fulfillment. Differentiate between survival-driven thoughts and those aligned with peace and joy. Let go of excessive thinking. Observe thoughts as they arise without diving into analysis. Tune into consciousness. Practice being present and connecting with your inner self beyond just the mind. Conclusion. In wrapping up, Nguyen's insights offer a profound shift in how we understand and handle our own suffering. By identifying our reactions, observing our thoughts without judgment, and aligning with our consciousness, we can begin to experience life with more peace and less mental struggle. The journey to ending suffering starts with a simple realization. You don't have to believe everything you think. If you found these insights helpful, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments how you plan to apply these steps in your life. Remember, your journey to ending suffering begins with understanding and shifting your own mind.